Sue from Sweetie Darling, and today I'm going to show you how to make a vegan birthday cake, the best vegan birthday cake ever. Now, I don't think I've voiced this before, but I can't, the cruel irony of this world, I can't actually eat cake. The reason behind it is I am intolerant to gluten, dairy and eggs, which are huge parts of cake, of course. So it's basically vegan, which I now am as a result of that. So what I thought might be a good idea to do, because after speaking to people about this, it turns out a lot of people either are vegan or are intolerant to one of those things, or are very interested in being vegan but are terrified of doing so because they feel like they're going to be living on a life of lettuce and water. It's not the case. One of the most important things I think in life is cake, and when I found out all the intolerances that I have, because there are more than the ones I've just mentioned, there are a lot of them, and my biggest worry was, oh my god, cake, biscuits, chocolate, what the hell am I going to do? So I immediately set to baking and finding out what I could bake with what ingredients and what tastes good and what is going to be a good substitute for desserts and snacks and all the sweet things that I like in life. And as such, I've come up with a few really good staples now. So I do a killer chocolate cake, banana cake is very good, cookies, and of course a vanilla birthday cake, which everyone needs. This vegan birthday cake is also gluten-free. If you needed to make this for someone who didn't have a gluten intolerance, then you would just replace the gluten-free flour for normal flour. So the first ingredients you need is 240 grams of a dairy-free milk. Now this is up to you what you use. I use almond milk. You can use oat milk. Rice milk is very good as well. Whatever your preferred dairy-free milk is, you can use. Soya milk will also work, but like I say, I use almond and I really like almond milk. Now to this milk, you want to mix a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar and just mix that round and then leave it. Now what this is going to do, it curdles the milk a little bit and it thickens it slightly. It's not going to thicken it to the consistency of yogurt, it's just going to look a little bit curdled, but it makes it more, I like to think of it as the vegan buttermilk. And the vinegar is also going to react with bicarbonate of soda, which we'll add to the cake later, to make that fizzy reaction, which is going to help the cake rise. Now in another bowl you want 120 grams of dairy-free butter. Now again, this is up to you which brand you go for. There are two brands I really like. One of them is called Pure, which is it's got no flavour to it really. The other one is Vitalite, which I think has a bit more flavour, so I normally prefer that one over Pure, but there are many people who prefer Pure over Vitalite. So it's just a personal preference thing. But you'll need 120 grams of that, and then you want to mix it with 200 grams of caster sugar. Because there is quite a lot more sugar here than butter, it's not going to cream like a normal cake mix would. If you had equal amounts of butter and sugar, it would go really pale and light and fluffy. This isn't going to do that, but you will be able to beat it and it will go a little bit fluffy. So spend, I would say, a good minute at least beating this, just so everything is combined together. You can then add half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of vanilla extract, depending on what vanilla you use. I use Nielsen Massey and I find a teaspoon is too strong, so I would reduce that down to half a teaspoon so it's not sickeningly vanilla-y, because believe it or not, you can actually have too much vanilla in a cake. Beat the vanilla into the butter and sugar mix until that's well combined, and then you can add 230 grams of self-raising flour. Now this can be normal flour or gluten-free flour depending on your needs. If you're going for gluten-free, my favourite brand is Dove's Farm. I haven't found a better flour yet than that one. Now to the self-raising flour, you can add a teaspoon and a half of baking powder and half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, and then a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. Once your flour and your bicarb and baking powder are in the bowl, you can add your milk and vinegar mix to the bowl and then give everything a good mix with your beaters. Now this is quite a runny cake mix. It also looks, because there's quite a lot of liquid there, it looks as if it can be curdled. If you feel more comfortable adding a bit of flour, a bit of liquid, a bit of flour, a bit of liquid, then by all means you can do that. I don't have enough patience for that, so I like to sling everything into one bowl and then just mix it. Make sure you scrape down your bowl partway through mixing so you don't end up with loose bits of butter or flour hanging around the outside of your bowl. You want everything combined in there. So once you've scraped it all down, give it another mix just till it's all incorporated. Now the dish I'm using, I was going to use a normal cake tin for this, but I wanted to illustrate that you can literally bake this in anything. So I have used a Le Creuset pan. It's a 9-inch square one. I was going to use an ordinary baking sheet that I would make like roast potatoes in or something like that, but then I thought actually that's not very nice, so I won't use that. So I just grabbed out a Le Creuset one, but you can use cake tins, you can use cupcake tins if you want to. anything you have that you can line or just put a sheet of greaseproof in, you can use. So mine was a 9-inch square pan, which means you could also use this mix in a 10-inch round tin. You could split it between 2 8-inch round tins if you wanted a 2-layer cake with some filling in between. You could make 12 cupcakes with this recipe. It's really, really versatile and you can do lots of different things with it. So there's probably something in your kitchen that you can bake this cake in. So I just laid a sheet of greaseproof in my 9-inch square pan and I had my oven preheated to 160. You can have it at 180 if you prefer, but I prefer to lower my oven and then bake things a bit longer so they don't, but it's just so they cook more evenly, so they don't go very brown on the outside and they aren't quite cooked in the middle. I prefer to just do it a little bit longer at a lower temperature. So mine's at 160 fan, and then once I put it in the oven, it took 40 minutes in my oven for this cake to bake. If you were doing cupcakes, of course, you've got smaller amounts of cake mix, so it's more likely to take, I'd say, 20 to 30 minutes for those to bake. But the best way to check is when you press the cake and it springs back, you know it's done. You can also try pushing a cocktail stick into the middle of the cake, and when it comes out clean and there's no crumbs in it, then it's also, you know it's done. So I brought that out of the oven and then let it cool in the pan, and whilst it was cooling I made my buttercream topping. So for this I used 100 grams of my dairy-free butter, that's my Vitalite, and I gave that a bit of a mix in the bowl to start with just to soften it up a bit because I didn't want really hard butter, and then mixing it with icing sugar is just going to make a big old icing sugar explosion. So I softened the butter a bit first and then I added 300 grams of icing sugar gradually. So I poured it in, I think in 3 or 4 amounts. So just poured a bit in, gave that a good mix with my beaters, added another chunk, gave that a good mix, and then added the last or the second to last chunk, gave that a good mix, and I added some vanilla in there as well. And again, it was about 1/4 teaspoon to 1/2 teaspoon because I was using Nielsen Massey. You can taste this and see how you like it, and you'll see it's quite a thick buttercream. Because dairy-free butter is much softer than normal butter, it will overall be a softer buttercream. Normally with buttercream, if we did 100 grams of butter, we'd only have 200 grams of icing sugar, but we have 300 grams of icing sugar, so we've tripled the amount of icing sugar compared to butter in this recipe, which does make quite a thick buttercream. To combat that and to make it a little bit softer, you can add a teaspoon, maybe 1 to 3 teaspoons, depending on how soft you want it, of your non-dairy milk. I added 2 teaspoons in the end just to get it to the consistency that I wanted it. Once your cake has cooled a bit, you can remove it from the pan and put it on a cooling rack and just let it cool down completely. When it has completely cooled down, I like to carefully peel the bottom of the greaseproof paper away from the cake, but with this kind of cake, because it's so fragile, you can break the cake as you're doing it. So what I like to do is put another cooling rack on top of my cake, flip the whole thing upside down, and then gently peel the greaseproof paper away from the back of the cake, so I'm not trying to do it the other way round or after I've cut the cake when it's going to end up just breaking to pieces. So I'll turn it over, peel that greaseproof away, and then use 2 cooling racks to flip the cake back over again, still with the greaseproof under it, but I've already loosened it from the cake. So now it's nice and cool and I've got my buttercream made. I can pour all my buttercream on top of my cake and then spread that around with a palette knife. And then for the decoration, I have just had my Baking Time Club subscription sprinkles delivered, so I really wanted to use these because these sprinkles are vegan, so I thought it was perfect if I'm making a vegan cake, decorate them with vegan sprinkles, and it just looks really birthday cakey. So in my August subscription box, I got the Cosmic Unicorn sprinkles. They're really nice blues and whites and pinks in there, and they are gluten-free, halal, vegan, dairy-free and kosher. And I'll put a link to Baking Time Club underneath this video, so if you love sprinkles, then you can go there and you can either just buy individual packs or you can subscribe and then you get a monthly box of sprinkles delivered to your door. And it's just the best. I've said it 1,000 times, it's the best mail ever. So with my sprinkles, I started with the idea that less is more, and I was like, no, it's not, because it's sprinkles. So I just put sprinkles everywhere. I just sprinkled and sprinkled and sprinkled, and I pressed them into the buttercream bit, and then I sprinkled some more. It's a vegan birthday cake. I want it to look really nice, and for it to look really nice, I want a lot of sprinkles on it. And then that is it. You can either leave your cake as it is, and obviously if it's for a birthday, then pop some birthday candles into it, or you can cut it into little squares if you're just doing it as a tray bake kind of thing. Either way, whatever you do with it, this is such a good cake. It's a cake that even if you aren't vegan and you don't have to eat vegan, it still tastes good. Now, I know and understand that, and the second you say something's vegan, people are like, oh no, don't want it, not interested. Because it's like, without butter and eggs, how do you make a good cake? This is how you make a good cake. I mean, if you're not a vegan hater and you're just happy to make this cake, make it and give it to the vegan haters. Don't tell them, don't even tell them. They'll be like, oh, this is very nice. And then you can be like, bam, vegan. Now, in response to hashtag yes darling, the Instagram stories thing seems to be working really, really well. I am so overwhelmed every single Monday when I go through and realise how many people are using the hashtag. Like, it's insane. As every single week I say, if you're baking or cake decorating this week, make sure you take photos, upload them to Instagram and use the hashtag yes darling, and I will shout you out on my Instagram stories on Monday. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button. There are brand new videos every single Monday. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.